Hello, sports fan. This is Stephen here for Sports Choice Plus. I'm bringing you a very special breakdown. I'm going to be covering the unhappy Bengal. Before we get right into this, I'm going to make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you can get all the updates and all the breakdowns. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The Kansas City Chiefs essentially showed us how you handle unhappy wide receivers. So when you think about Tyreek Hill, if you can't pay him, trade him. Essentially, what T. Higgins is dealing with the Cincinnati Bengals is essentially they're not going to want to pay him. When you think about them franchising T. Higgins and still having to pay Jamar Chase, who essentially is right around the corner from his payday, you got to think with the likelihood of everything we saw in Minnesota with them paying their star wide receiver 4 years, $140 million. T. Higgins is seeing this like, hey, I want that kind of money too. T. Higgins legitimately is a number one receiver that plays number two on this team because of Jamar Chase. When you think about Joe Burrow and the way he spins the ball, those days where Jamar Chase wasn't in the game, T. Higgins led the team in receiving. He did everything he was supposed to do, and he's expecting a payday. Like so many other players, he's expecting to fetch $27 to $30 million a year, like he's played and proven himself to. But when it comes down to it, the Cincinnati Bengals are not willing to put that money there. They franchise tagged him, and there's been no negotiations that are serious at this point. So what you're looking at T. Higgins is possibly a holdout. He doesn't have to sign his franchise tender until a certain amount of camp if he wants to get paid, and he can essentially sit out into the season and only miss a couple of dollars. But you got to think from the standpoint, T. Higgins isn't seen as a number one receiver as he values himself. Again, Cincinnati eventually is going to give Jamar Chase a massive deal. But in the meantime, they're going to be frustrated on the side of T. Higgins because they're not getting the contracts that they want. They're not getting the negotiations that they want. And there's nothing tangible that can change that. What I see in the future is this getting rocky, this getting possibly nasty, and the Cincinnati Bengals having to trade away T. Higgins. Essentially, he wants his value. There are spots on NFL teams that are looking for a number one guy. So essentially, when you're in Cincy, you have two different players. Again, I mentioned in the beginning what you do with unhappy players. Kansas City Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill to Miami, and they went off and still won a Super Bowl. Essentially, you're replaceable in the NFL. So I would just say T. Higgins, I would say force yourself out for a trade, possibly go someplace and get paid. But you got to keep in mind the Cincinnati Bengals are looking out for their best interest, and you should do the same thing for yourself. So T. Higgins is a legitimate number one. Some say number two. That can really get busy. That can really get it working. So I think that in the ultimate scheme of things, he needs to get his money. And nobody wants to play on a one-year deal with no guarantees for the future. So all you Cincinnati Bengals fans, all you NFL fans and T. Higgins fans, get in the comment section below. Definitely check out Sports Choice Plus, and we'll see you on the very next episode.